His first love died tragically on the same day. Connor blamed me for intercepting this call and has hated me all his life. He hates me but still enters into a marriage alliance with me just to torture me. He said that a person like me doesn't deserve happiness. In a new life, I watched him answer that call with my own eyes, and then he lost a leg. When the cries came, my mind was still in a mess. I felt cold all over and yet seemed a bit hot. I looked around in confusion. The nurse was pushing someone and running towards the operating room. Connor was supporting his mother who was about to collapse at any moment and following behind. And I, like a soulless person, followed closely behind the two of them with things in my hands. Lying on the hospital bed was Connor's father. "Mom, Dad will be fine." Connor frowned, and there didn't seem to be much worry on his face. "The company is in a mess now. Your father can't have an accident. Otherwise, our Connor's family will fall." Connor's mother was on the verge of tears. "Now medicine is advanced. I've also searched on the internet. As long as the doctor performs normally, there won't be any accidents." Connor comforted. When the operating room door closed, I finally came to my senses. I was reborn on the day when Connor's father had a heart attack. It was also the day when his first love, Emma, died. My heart was beating wildly. In my previous life, when Emma's call came, Connor's father was being rescued. The doctor said there could be danger at any time. My family and Connor's family have been friends for generations. The two families live in the same villa community and are neighbors. I have also grown up under the watch of Connor's father since I was a child. I was worried that there might be some accident during Connor's father's rescue. If Connor didn't wait here, he would definitely have regrets. So when I saw Emma's call coming, I quietly set Connor's phone to silent. Later, when Connor's father was rescued, Connor saw Emma's missed call on his phone. When he called back again, he couldn't get through. The next day, the news of Emma's death spread. Connor was extremely regretful. He grabbed my collar, threw me on the classroom table with bloodshot eyes, and blamed me for killing Emma. If I hadn't set his phone to silent, he could have saved her. I am the culprit. In my previous life, I had never experienced such a thing. The disappearance of a life made me fearful and terrified. I was also brainwashed by him and thought that all this was my fault, so I let him vent his anger on me. From then on, I became the target of bullying by all my classmates. Everyone said that I was a murderer. I lived in a daze, and my grades dropped all the way from second in the grade. In the end, Connor used means to prevent me from taking the college entrance examination. Later, he used his family's company to threaten me, married me, and then tortured me. He said, "Ava, a person like you doesn't deserve to start a new life. Don't even think about running away. You should live in pain all your life. Remember day and night that it was you who caused a death. You will never forget this in your life." I lived in self-blame like this. He made me live in the darkest basement of Connor's house and live a life worse than that of servants. Finally, I froze to death on a snowy day. And Emma also died on a snowy day. The ringtone of the phone pulled me back from my memories of my previous life. The door of the operating room had already closed. I stood dazedly at the door of the operating room, looking at the constantly ringing phone. It was Emma calling. The ringtone gradually increased. I stared at the screen, and my fingers were trembling. In my previous life, because of this call and because I meddled in other people's business, I harmed myself and my family. This time, I won't be stupid again. Connor was still comforting his mother. The ringtone didn't seem to attract his attention. The environment was too noisy. People were coming and going, and the sounds of talking and crying were all mixed together. Connor needed to use a bit of hearing ability to hear the phone's sound. Suddenly, my tears flowed uncontrollably. It turns out that in my previous life, even if I didn't set the phone to silent, Connor wouldn't be able to answer Emma's call. It turns out that all this is not my fault at all. I pressed the volume button of the phone and gradually turned the phone's ringtone to the maximum. Connor finally heard the sound. He frowned and glanced at me. "Who's calling?" "Forget it, hang up." He also knew that at this time, anyone's call was less important than his father's life safety. I sneered in my heart. I walked over and stuffed the phone into his hand. What choice will he make this time without my interference? Connor obviously didn't expect it was Emma's call. He pursed his lips. His fingers stayed on the screen for a long time without answering until the call automatically stopped. Is it your aunt calling? Connor's mother casually asked. Connor just said no. The phone rang again. Connor's mother also saw the name on the screen clearly this time. Her face immediately became ugly. You're still fooling around with her? You really want to piss us off. Connor's mother was so angry that she was panting. Mom, Emma must have something urgent when she calls. After saying that, Connor looked at me. I saw that he had no intention of answering the phone at all. He looked at me like that, as if he wanted to hear some words of obstruction from me. But I only found this scene extremely ironic. Yes, he couldn't blame his parents. Only if I stopped him would he have an excuse for his actions. Ava, persuade him. He's really outrageous now. Connor's mother looked at me reproachfully. I curled my mouth sarcastically. The whole family expected me to be the villain so that they could all resent me with a clear conscience. Why couldn't I see it clearly in my previous life? When I was tortured by Connor in my previous life, Connor's mother only said, Ava, be patient. It will be fine when the anger in Connor's heart subsides. Connor also looked at me expectantly. I could clearly feel that he hoped I could give him a reason not to answer Emma's call. But I said, Auntie, Emma's call keeps coming. Maybe she really has something urgent? Now Uncle is also in the hospital. There are doctors here, and we are all here too. I didn't give anyone any advice. It's up to them to choose. After Connor heard this, a strange look flashed in his eyes, and then he walked to one side and answered the phone. Soon Connor ran back, his face full of urgency. Mom, I have something to do and need to go out for a while. Your dad is still lying in the operating room. Do you have to leave at this time for that little bitch? Connor glanced at me. Ava is here with you. Then he ran out. Yes, I am here with her. I am the one who cleans up his mess. Connor's mother was so angry that she covered her chest. Unable to vent her anger, she could only turn to look at me. You said you just let him act recklessly. Why didn't you stop him? You just watch him fool around with that woman. Connor's mother looked at me with a look of hating iron for not becoming steel. I just felt extremely disgusted. She couldn't control her own son and instead blamed me. What responsibility and obligation do I have to control him? Just because we are neighbors? Just because I showed affection for Connor? My phone rang at this time too. I frowned, looking worried. Dad. What's wrong? I'll go there soon. After hanging up the phone, I said anxiously to Connor's mother, Auntie, my dad is in the hospital now. I have to go there quickly. Obviously, Connor's mother didn't want me to leave, but she couldn't find a reason to keep me. Taking advantage of her stunned moment, I turned and slipped away. That's right. I specifically sent a text message to my dad and asked my dad to act in a play with me. I never want to have any relationship with this disgusting family again. Of course, because there are still business dealings between our families, my dad still put on a full show and really found a reason to go to the hospital. I suppressed the excitement in my heart. Next, Connor's father will be given a critical illness notice, and Connor's mother will have a cerebral infarction due to anger and anxiety. Of course, because Connor and I were both there in my previous life, everything proceeded in an orderly manner, and in the end, nothing major happened to either of them. But this time, it's different. Connor and I are childhood sweethearts. We were born only a few days apart. Since we were young, our parents arranged a baby marriage for us. As our parents required, we have been in love from kindergarten all the way to the second year of high school. Connor grew up as his mother hoped, tall and handsome, with excellent character and learning. He has been occupying the first place in his grade all year round and is recognized as a cold and aloof top student in the whole school. Perhaps it was more than 10 years of regular life that made Connor tired. In this year of the second year of high school, Connor suddenly became rebellious. Emma transferred to our school at the beginning of the second half of the second year of high school. She is strikingly beautiful. When everyone is still in the awkward stage of youth, She has already put on heavy makeup that all classmates envy. She wears tinkling bracelets on her hands, striking the hearts of every classmate who is studying with their heads down. Everyone is attracted by her, and Connor is no exception. He has mechanically fulfilled the requirements of his teachers and parents since he was a child and never resisted. When Emma appeared, his numb eyes instantly lit up. I have never seen that kind of look on his face before. My heart instantly felt a painful feeling. I knew that something seemed to be changing. Emma is like a piece of sodium metal, breaking into the lake where Connor has been immersed for many years, making Connor's peaceful life boil instantly. He finally experienced the taste of freedom. He began to skip classes and have puppy love. He began to do things he didn't dare to do in more than 10 years of suppressed time. I have advised him countless times to study hard and that the future is important. But he said to me, "Ava, you are jealous, right?" He blew smoke rings in my face and looked towards the toilet from time to time. In the toilet, Emma was pulling a girl in. Soon, there was crying. "Connor, Emma is not a good person. Stay away from her." Connor threw the cigarette on the ground, stamped it out with his foot, and curled his mouth. "You talk bad about people behind their backs. Are you a good person?" I still wanted to persuade him painstakingly, but Connor was already full of impatience. "Is it that I have been too good to you all these years that you are taking advantage of me? If you say one more bad word about Emma, I won't be polite. I advise you, mind your own business. Such a boring life is enough for you to endure alone." 06. Everything that happened in the past is vividly in my mind. I have regretted interfering with him countless times. Fortunately, I have a chance to start over. When I arrived at the hospital, my father was sitting on one side with an 4 drip in his hand, while my mother was lying on the bed playing with her mobile phone. Seeing the two of them, I threw myself at them directly. After Connor married me in my previous life, I never saw them again. Later, when Ava's family went bankrupt and I wanted to visit them, Connor wouldn't let me. I was completely under house arrest by Connor. "Why are you crying? Was the rescue unsuccessful?" Father stood up, his face showing an indescribable emotion. Ava's mother patted her back and kept comforting her. "Baby, don't cry. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are part of human nature." Connor's father was thus judged dead by his parents. I held back my laughter and explained. Only then did I notice that my father was getting an injection. "Dad, what's going on? Didn't I tell you to act? Why are you really getting an injection?" I looked worried. In my previous life, Connor said that father died of rectal cancer. I immediately panicked. "Nothing's wrong with Dad. It's just that my body has been a bit uncomfortable these days, so I came to have a look. The doctor said it's nothing serious." Father looked at me lovingly. "No. A full physical examination must be done. I can't listen to anything now." Not long after father died in my previous life, mother jumped off a building and followed father. In this life, I will definitely make my parents live a long life no matter what. First, tell me what's wrong with you. Didn't you stick to that kid in Connor's family the most? Why did you leave today when such a big thing happened in his family? There was a hint of jealousy in father's words. I sneered disdainfully. Connor himself didn't stay with his dad. What am I still doing there? Don't mention their family anymore. Arrange for a physical examination now. I didn't want to mention Connor. I immediately took my parents for a physical examination. Ava's family is not short of money. That night, the hospital arranged some items that don't require fasting for Dad's examination. As soon as the results of the enhanced magnetic resonance examination came out, I breathed a sigh of relief. There is a tumor on father's rectum, but the tumor volume is not large. As long as it is removed as soon as possible, there will basically be no problem in the later stage. After the doctor read the film, he praised me continuously. "Your daughter is really a lucky star. Problems on the rectum are usually very difficult to detect. Generally, when the body starts to have symptoms, it is basically advanced stage. It is very difficult to detect with ordinary physical examinations." The doctor looked emotional. Father also thought I was his lucky star and praised me to the doctor with a look of relief about how excellent I am. I stood aside. For such praise, I only felt ashamed. I am not a lucky star at all. I killed them in my previous life. 07. The next day, I asked for leave from my teacher and was ready to accompany my father for the operation early in the morning. As soon as my father's operation was finished in the morning, a person was sent to the emergency room of the hospital. When I saw it, good heavens! Isn't the person lying on the hospital bed Connor? He was covered in blood. The wound on his left leg was even more shocking. A police officer followed behind. When I saw this, I quickly grabbed him. Comrade policeman, what happened? A police officer followed behind. When I saw this, I quickly Comrade policeman, I know that person. That's my neighbor. Of course I know that the police won't disclose information casually. But when I said this, the policeman quickly pulled me aside and took my statement on the spot. It turned out that the police received a report from the masses this morning and only then found the injured Connor. You have their family's contact information, right? Hurry up and contact his family and ask them to come over. After listening, I felt a heavy heart. Didn't Emma die in this life? Did Connor save her? After Connor saved her, why didn't Emma call the police immediately? Where is Emma? All this doesn't seem so simple. But looking at Connor like this, I inexplicably felt a sense of relief. Like Emma, like freedom. Do you still want freedom next, Connor? Comrade policeman, Connor's father had a heart attack and was hospitalized yesterday. If you contact his mother now, she definitely won't be able to hold on. I was understanding. The policeman was also filled with emotion. No matter what, his family must be present in such a situation. I directly gave the phone to the policeman to save them from looking it up. The policeman contacted Connor's aunt. Soon she arrived. When she arrived, the doctor just came out and asked the family member to sign for the operation. The left leg is severely necrotic and must be amputated. Connor's aunt seemed unable to bear such a blow and almost lost her footing. She immediately spotted me standing aside and roared. What on earth happened? Why didn't you watch over him a bit? Didn't you go with him? Nonsense. What are you yelling about here? What does this have to do with my daughter? My mother suddenly appeared and questioned Connor's aunt coldly with a stern face. She didn't expect my mother to be here. Her face immediately became ugly. She said sheepishly. No, it's just that I saw that she usually chases after Connor. When such a big thing happened to Connor, she didn't even say to stop him. If she could watch over Connor a bit, this wouldn't have happened today. Come on. She has no obligation to watch over him. Besides, her dad is in the hospital and has just had an operation. At this time, instead of staying with her dad, should she chase after Connor? She must be a fool. Can Connor be more important than her dad? Knowing that she was in the wrong, she didn't dare to say anything more and turned to continue discussing with the doctor. The final result was of course amputation. In the winter in Beijing, even ordinary people can freeze to death. Connor is still injured. It's really lucky that he didn't die. Mother pulled me into father's ward with an unhappy face and murmured. There's not a single person in Connor's family who can be reasonable. They always want to put everything on my daughter. You still said that we should become in-laws in the future. Without reason, they can bully Ava to death. If they really get married, it will be terrible. As she said, she turned and poked my temple with her finger. You are really something. You just took a fancy to that guy Connor. That guy has such a cold temperament. Marrying him, you don't know how hard it will be. In the past, it has always been you who have been accommodating him. I know, Mom. I don't like him anymore. I said in a flat tone. My mom opened her mouth, and the unfinished words got stuck. She looked at me in disbelief. Have you changed your nature? Really don't like him anymore? I nodded firmly. Connor even had his leg amputated for a girl. Such a person. I clicked my tongue in disgust. My parents were also shocked. After I told them what had happened, they both sighed deeply. I still thought Connor had a cold temperament. It turns out that people didn't even fancy our Ava at all. My mom had long been fed up with me always accommodating Connor. Now that she heard that Connor had broken a leg for another woman, she had no sympathy for him at all. 08 A few hours later, Connor's aunt knocked on the door of my dad's hospital room. At this time, in front of my sick dad, my mom and I were eating sumptuous barbecue, punishing him for always not having time to accompany us. Dad pretended to be angry, but indulgently let us act willfully. As soon as Connor's aunt came in, I felt her face sink, but she still forced out a smile. Ava's brother, are you feeling better? Father nodded and asked directly, I heard that something happened to Connor's dad too. Is he better? He has been transferred to the general ward. It's just my sister-in-law. The sequelae of cerebral infarction are a bit serious. And Connor. As she spoke, she burst into tears. Ava, go and see him. He just woke up. I continued to eat kebabs heartlessly and murmured, I'll go and see him when he gets better. Ava. Connor is like this now. If you don't go and see him, it's fine. You still have the mood to eat barbecue. Connor's aunt seemed to regard me as his wife. She couldn't stand anything I did. Connor's aunt, what I eat is my freedom. Connor's broken leg wasn't caused by me. My dad didn't even care about me. But you are actually taking care of me. Besides, Connor has a girlfriend. Don't always link him with me in the future. I wiped my mouth, picked up the finished garbage and walked out. In fact, even if Connor's aunt didn't say anything, I was going to see him. After all, no one wants to see his miserable state more than I do. Not only will I go, but I will also pierce his heart. After throwing away the garbage, I went to Connor's ward. When he saw me, he just lifted his eyelids. Pour me a glass of water, Connor said. I stood by the bed and didn't move. I was just looking at him from head to toe. After a while, when my aunt leaves, you arrange for Emma to come and see me. Connor continued to talk to himself. I sneered. Do you know where Emma is? I asked. It seems that Connor has no idea at all that he was abandoned by Emma yesterday. Looking at his calm and serious look as always, I guess he still doesn't know that his leg has been amputated. Connor had an expression of not wanting to waste words with me and stretched out his hand and said, lend me your phone. I am naturally happy to lend him my phone. But after he dialed Emma's phone number, the opposite side showed that it was powered off. He didn't give up and called several times, but it still showed that it was powered off. Emma must have had an accident. Call the police quickly. Connor looked worried. I only felt sarcastic. Sure enough, it's true love. He has injured himself and still worries about her. But after knowing the truth later, will you still love her? Emma is fine. She left the country early this morning. How could it be? Connor was a little disappointed, but soon cheered up again. I know. She must be worried that my parents will blame her. This girl is so timid at this time? Since I dared to go and find her yesterday, I have the ability to protect her for a lifetime. I couldn't listen to his stupid words and interrupted him directly. You were sent to the hospital only when you were found by an old ragpicker today. I felt that Connor was already a bit suspicious of life. He still insisted, impossible. Yesterday you were not here. Your mom had a cerebral infarction and will have to lie in bed for the rest of her life. I continued to release news that would make him collapse. Connor obviously didn't want to believe it, but his expression was indeed touched. He was a little regretful, but this is still not enough to make him collapse. After all, he has always been calm. I glanced at his leg and said lightly, because you weren't sent to the hospital in time, your leg was amputated. Connor was stunned for a moment. He tried to feel it to prove that I was lying. Then he frantically sat up, regardless of the pain of his wound, and suddenly uncovered the quilt covering him. Seeing his left leg with only half left, he was completely devastated. How could it be? How could this happen? My leg. He screamed shamelessly in the ward, desperately smashed things, grabbed his head, and even slapped himself. How he wished this was a dream. He wanted to stand up but directly fell to the floor. Because his right leg has a comminuted fracture, even if it is cured, there will be sequelae. He loves freedom the most. Because he yearns for freedom, he is attracted by the unrestrained Emma. But now, he will not be free for the rest of his life. Even with a prosthetic limb, for someone like Connor who pursues perfection, he still cannot accept it. I silently exited the ward and thoughtfully closed the door for him. Other patients still need to rest. The police finally found nothing. That place is in the old city district with many blind spots for surveillance. Now only by finding Emma can the truth be revealed. In my previous life, Connor always hated me for not letting him answer that call, which caused Emma's death. Because I was young, a life was lost due to my obstruction. I really blame myself. But later I understood. If Emma really needed help, she could have called the police instead of asking Connor to go over. All of this was a trap set for Connor from the very beginning. As for the person behind this trap, I believe they will appear soon. Connor was in a slump due to recuperating from his injuries. While I took the college entrance examination and was admitted to my ideal university with the first place in the school and the second place in the city, I chose the major of financial management because Connor's current situation is still not miserable enough. On the day of my entrance celebration banquet, the so-called person behind the scenes appeared. It turned out that Connor's father had a bastard child outside long ago. Now he has blatantly brought the person back home. For no other reason, Connor's family doesn't need a good-for-nothing who is in a slump. Connor's mother is also paralyzed in bed and needs someone to take care of her all the time. Naturally, Connor's father has no scruples. When Jacob appeared, I saw the ambition in his eyes at a glance. He is not at all as indulgent and comfortable as his name suggests. He tried hard to fit into this circle, but I still saw his uneasiness. He has been raised freely outside for so many years. I heard that he dropped out after not finishing 9 years of compulsory education and started hanging out. Now Connor's father is preparing to directly take him to take over the company's business. Connor's father has always thought that education is of little use. Talking on paper is not as good as practical operation. Once Connor was excellent, so he wasn't in a hurry. Now that this son is not capable, he can only take him to get started as soon as possible. I stepped forward and greeted Jacob thoughtfully. His face flushed immediately. Hello, Jacob. I am Ava. I am your neighbor. Welcome to my entrance celebration banquet. Jacob has been looked down upon by many people during this period. I am the first person to greet him warmly. He is extremely flattered. Ava, why are you bothering with him? He is a bastard child and has no education. You should stay away from Connor's family. After all, you had a good relationship with Connor before. My parents have always told me not to have any more contact with Connor's family. They think Connor's family is too messy. Mom and Dad, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. On the day of university registration, Connor rarely came out to see me off. Ava, why did you choose a university so far away? Wait for me for a year. Let's apply to a university near home together, okay? There was a rare look of expectation in his eyes. I just smiled. Although this sentence really makes him seem arrogant, I didn't scold him. Next, I still have more things that can stimulate him. I chose a city in the south because I hate the cold very much now. When I was frozen to death in my previous life, I always dreamed of going to a warm place. I plan to take my parents to find a warm place to spend the rest of our lives after that matter is over. After entering university, I studied hard and actively participated in various activities at the same time. I played badminton and volleyball in a miniskirt. On weekends, I drank and bragged with my classmates at seaside pubs and traveled everywhere. I actively shared my daily life on my moments and added a caption, "The teacher was right. We are free after entering university. We can skip classes, drink alcohol, dress freely, and fall in love freely." I know Connor has been following my moments. This message is enough to break his defenses. I just want him to know that those freedoms he longed for in high school are nothing, and the Emma who attracted him is not special either. In college, anyone can do what Emma did in high school. I also want him to realize that he was only half a year away from the freedom he wanted. Those actions of his that he thought were great and rebellious against his parents are not great at all, but stupid. Parents may have some desire to control us, but Connor's father and Connor's mother are really not that strict with him. He has his own room, his own hobbies, and pocket money that he can freely spend. Connor's father and Connor's mother's only request for him is for Connor to take on Connor's family in the future. Besides that, they basically haven't controlled him much. He is just living too happily, so he thinks everything is a shackle. Sure enough, after Connor saw this post on my moments, he immediately called me. At this time, I was dancing in a bar with my friends. The atmosphere around was extremely lively. Ava, is it really free after entering university? Of course. I answered casually while also echoing my classmates' words. Okay, I won't talk to you anymore. Everyone is waiting for me. After saying that, I directly hung up Connor's call. Once he thought that falling in love with Emma was a remarkable thing. He felt that he was greater than anyone else. He felt that rebelling against the teacher was the greatest freedom. I heard that later Connor was in a slump for a long time. This was all told to me by Jacob. Since becoming friends with Jacob, we have been in contact all the time. Jacob is not good at his studies. Sometimes when he has a headache from reading company documents, he comes to ask me. Right after graduation, I had at least 3 years of work experience. I also know about 70 to 80% of the internal situation of Connor's family. The projects that Connor's father brings for Jacob to practice on have also become projects for me to practice on. Under Connor's father's cultivation, I had excellent grades in 4 years of college. Right after graduation, I had at least 3 years of work experience. I also know about 70 to 80% of the internal situation of Connor's family. After graduating from college and returning to my hometown, Connor's father suggested that Jacob and I get engaged. My parents didn't agree, but I directly agreed with a smile. Sure. Jacob and I can talk well anyway. Getting married is also good for both companies. At a joint gathering of our two families, I agreed without hesitation. Jacob must be overjoyed, but there was a flash of barely perceptible panic in his eyes. Of course he should be panicked. He has quite a few women outside. However, I don't care. Connor was the first one to stand up and oppose. He has a prosthetic limb on, but after all, he is no longer that healthy and perfect him. I object. Ava, don't you like me anymore? It should be us who get engaged. He looked at me pitifully, as if I were the one who abandoned him. Connor, that was all in childhood. Besides, didn't you like Emma back then? I directly stabbed Connor in his wound. The name Emma has long become his taboo. She hasn't returned for so many years. It must be because of a guilty conscience. No matter how Connor brainwashes himself, this is an unchangeable fact. Back then, you lost a leg for that so-called Emma. In the future, when Ava sees your leg, she will think that you once lost a leg for another woman? How can we live like this? Jacob's mother said. Connor's mother lay in bed for 2 years. Connor's father couldn't bear it anymore and filed for divorce. Now she has nothing to do with Connor's family. However, Connor still has money, so Connor's mother's life is not too bad. But what I want is for Connor's whole family to be unlucky. I and Jacob got married soon. After marriage, I went to work in Connor's family company. Jacob also gradually took over Connor's family. On the surface, Jacob is the chairman of Connor's family, but in fact, I have always been the one making decisions behind the scenes. After getting married to Jacob, I also gradually learned some truths about the events of that year. Jacob called his friends when he was drunk and mentioned Emma's name. Boss, that bitch Emma actually escaped. What should we do now? Jacob also gradually took over Connor's family. On the surface, Jacob is the chairman of Connor's family, but in fact, I have always been but it doesn't matter. We have her video in our hands. I bet she won't dare to act rashly. I was lying on the bed. When Jacob opened the door to see if I was asleep, I quickly closed my eyes. As expected, Jacob planned this case. As for the reason why Jacob didn't appear in my previous life, I can also guess. They accidentally killed Emma, and then Jacob escaped. In my previous life, nothing happened to Connor. Naturally, Connor's father wouldn't offend an excellent son for a Jacob who had committed a crime. In this life, Connor is no longer excellent. Even with a physical disability, Connor's father naturally won't give up Jacob as a son. I quickly sent people to inquire about Emma's news at the border and also sent people to keep an eye on Beicheng. Emma is now desperate. She has no one to rely on. The only person she can turn to is Jacob. Sure enough, soon my people sent Emma's photo. She is terrifyingly thin. There are bruises all over her body. Only that face can still be seen barely. But she looks much older than people of the same age. Emma quickly found Jacob. She asked Jacob for a large sum of money. Jacob told her to leave Beicheng. Emma naturally refused. She secretly stayed in Beicheng. And she has been inquiring about Connor. I sent someone to give Emma a little news that Connor still loves her, saying that Connor has been sad for Emma all these years. Emma was really excited. I was also very excited. When she contacts Connor, the good show will begin. Connor's family company was soon investigated by relevant authorities due to management problems. The news that Jacob's personal problems violated the law was also reported together. Jacob was taken to the police station for investigation. Of course, all this was done by me through someone. Emma also contacted Connor when Jacob was locked up in the detention center. She was also arrested that night. Connor was red-eyed and angrily shouted at Emma in pain. "Why did you run away?" As long as Emma doesn't run away, Connor can find an excuse for his leg injury. He is for great love and freedom. Emma's escape made him a complete joke. Connor has been looking for the murderer who hurt him back then. Because he is in so much pain. He must find the murderer to cheer himself up. Emma, worried about being implicated, immediately told all the evil deeds of Jacob and others. When Jacob was still in the detention center, all his crimes were made public. Connor's family was completely in chaos. Originally, Emma was someone Jacob deliberately arranged to be by Connor's side. Since childhood, Connor has had excellent grades and the company of his parents. However, he and his mother depended on each other and didn't even have money for school. His heart has long been unbalanced. Since junior high school, he has been hanging out outside and has been keeping an eye on Connor since then. He watched Connor being picked up and dropped off to and from school by a driver every day. He watched Connor become an outstanding student in everyone's mouth. He was so jealous that he wanted to destroy him. Once this thought emerged, he could no longer control it. First of all, he wanted to destroy Connor's good grades, so he found someone to tempt Connor to have puppy love. He observed him for a long time. He found that Connor didn't like those with good grades, those who were cute, or those who were lively. Dull and beautiful girls didn't attract him either. Finally, he discovered that it seemed that no bad students had confessed to him yet. At that time, he thought there was a chance. He has always been hanging out outside and knows all kinds of girls who are involved in society. Emma is the most vain, has the best acting skills, and is also the most beautiful among the people he knows. He only gave Emma 500 yuan and asked her to get close to Connor. Unexpectedly, she succeeded immediately. Things went more smoothly than he expected. Later, Emma took a fancy to Connor's family conditions and wanted to quit, but of course Jacob didn't allow it. They were not good people to begin with. They insulted Emma on the spot, took a video, and threatened Emma to trick Connor out. At that time, Jacob was so jealous that he didn't expect even a woman like Emma to dare to betray him. When I conveyed all this to Connor, his eyes were bloodshot and his hands were tightly grasping his thighs. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. I really regret it. I really regret it. Connor looked at me crying. Ava, you said that at the hospital. It would have been great if I hadn't answered that call. If only you had hidden my cell phone at that time. You said you liked me so much back then. Why didn't you stop her call for me? If only you had stopped it, everything would be different and I wouldn't have lost my leg. He tried to morally kidnap me. I just sneered and said, Connor, Connor. Back then, for your great love, you didn't even care about your dad. Isn't Emma the one you love the most? Didn't all this come from your own asking? Why are you still regretting it? I didn't say anything to blame him. I just put Jacob looked extremely dejected. He seemed to feel sorry for me. I didn't say anything to blame him. I just put two materials in front of him. One was the share transfer letter of Connor's family, and the other was a pregnancy test report. Jacob looked at me in surprise. You're pregnant? He was very surprised that I could be pregnant because we had been married for 3 years and I still couldn't get pregnant. So he had long found someone outside to give birth to a child. Because it was a girl, he didn't bring it back. Well, I'm pregnant. But now the company is in turmoil and there are some problems with the new project. The company is now facing a large amount of debt and is on the verge of bankruptcy. I can't hold on anymore. I was thinking of selling the company's shares and repaying the debt. When you get out, come to my family's company. Kick me out of the board of directors. You sell the shares and use this money to start anew. When I get out, the 3 of us will run it well. Let's get a fake divorce first. Jacob refused to accept the bankruptcy of Connor's family. Over all these years, he has long become conceited and confidently believes that his decisions are correct. Okay, I and the child will wait for you to get out. With tears in my eyes, I put on an act of deep affection between husband and wife. After leaving the detention center, I immediately contacted a lawyer to handle the divorce and share matters. Connor didn't agree with me selling the shares. Ava, don't sell. Believe me. Together we will definitely be able to help Connor's family tide over the difficulties. I'm pregnant. Now I just want to take good care of my pregnancy. So I don't accept your suggestion. I just want money. I touched my lower abdomen and smiled slightly at Connor. You're not short of money at all. You still have Ava's family. Why are you in such a hurry? If you want to keep Connor's family, then you take out money to buy back these shares yourself. After that, you can operate Connor's family as you wish. Connor doesn't have many shares in his hands. Most of them have been transferred to Jacob's name. The shares on Connor's father's side have also been transferred to my name. This is the result of Jacob's persuasion. Because I have his future grandson in my belly, he didn't suspect either. Moreover, for so many years, Connor's father is also clear about some corruption within Connor's family. He also knows that Connor's family is indeed on the decline. Connor has to spend a lot of money if he wants to truly control Connor's family. In the end, he still bought it. Because without Connor's family, Connor is completely a useless person. But there wasn't enough money. He could only mortgage or sell off his assets under his name and borrow money everywhere. Finally, he barely became the person in power of Connor's family. And I got the sold shares. Not many, 200 million. Because I was worried that Connor would give up if he couldn't raise enough money, I didn't ask for an exorbitant price. Not long after Connor stabilized in that position, I used the hidden dangers that had been planted long ago to once again put Connor's family in the spotlight. A series of scandals of Connor's family were exposed. Many projects were suspended for various reasons, and the funds were slow to be collected. In the end, bankruptcy was still declared. Fortunately, all the debts of the company are on Jacob's head, while Connor only holds shares. He just didn't get anything. No, he still owes the money borrowed to buy the shares. Tens of millions. Not too much. But for Connor, who is physically disabled and has little work experience, this is enough to crush him. As for our family's company, over the years I have been asking my father to sell off shares. Now he is no longer the person in power of Ava's family's company. When selling the shares of Connor's family, my parents flew to a tropical country. I had long handled immigration for them. They were ready to enjoy their twilight years. After watching Connor's family go bankrupt, I also disappeared. 2 years later, I reappeared in Beijing with a child. Beijing is in winter again. The cold wind cuts people's faces like a knife. I heard that Jacob's mother ran away, leaving Connor's father. After Connor's family went bankrupt, Connor's mother had no money for treatment and was dragged to death. And Connor and his father live in a small rented house in a city village. When the two saw me appear, their eyes lit up. But when they saw the blonde and blue-eyed child in my arms, Connor's father was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Ava, where have you been? Who? Who is he? He is the child I gave birth to after being pregnant for 10 months. He is 1.5 years old this year, I said with a smile. Connor's father covered his heart and looked horrified. You deceived us. The child you are carrying is not my grandson at all. Of course. Jacob is such a bad person through and through. How could I give birth to his child? I came back just to see how miserable you are. Seeing you so miserable, I am satisfied. The two were dressed in rags. Connor's father was used to having a nanny take care of him. As a male chauvinist, he naturally wouldn't do laundry or cooking, and Connor has inconvenient legs and feet. Usually, he goes out to do odd jobs to support the two of them. As for why he does odd jobs, it is naturally because he owes too much money to the bank. Now as long as there is money in his account, it will be automatically deducted. He looked at me with red eyes, extremely painful. Why, Ava? Why did you do this to our Connor family? I remembered those days when I was locked in the basement of Connor's house. I begged for mercy countless times. I asked Connor to find the real murderer who killed Emma. I begged him to let me go. I just intercepted that call. I didn't hurt Emma. I didn't deserve to die, he just said. You think you didn't hurt Emma and you want to escape punishment? Impossible. I say you are the chief culprit and you are the chief culprit. A bodyguard came over and took the child in my hand. I say you hurt me, so you hurt me. Bear it well. My purpose in coming back is very simple. I just want to anger them on purpose, make them lose hope and regret for the rest of their lives. Connor was extremely angry and picked up a brick beside him and wanted to beat me to death. Of course, my bodyguard directly blocked it. Should we send him to the police station? The bodyguard pressed him to the ground. Connor's thin face was pressed against a stone. The stone instantly cut his cheek and blood gushed out. No need. Sending him to the police station where he has food, drink and heating is too cheap for him. In my previous life, because Emma died in the cold winter, he was extremely distressed. So he kept torturing me in various ways in winter. Not to mention heating, I didn't even have a slightly thicker piece of clothing. Since he is so great, he has to experience it himself. In his shabby house, the landlord doesn't provide heating either. Connor usually only earns a few dozen yuan a day and he is reluctant to turn on the heating. It is said that this winter is a once-in-a-century cold winter. Connor's extra chapter after Ava left, Connor had a high fever that night because of the cold. In his dream, he returned to the time when his father was having an operation in the hospital. Ava intercepted that call. At that time, he was extremely happy. Great. Now he wouldn't have to undergo amputation. He would go to college. The illegitimate child wouldn't come to Connor's house. Connor's family wouldn't go bankrupt. He could even marry Ava. He looked at all this happily. But things didn't go as he imagined. After Emma died, he saw himself blaming all the mistakes on Ava. He tortured Ava. He ruined Ava's family. He also deliberately didn't give Ava heating or thick clothes. In the end, she died on that cold snowy day. After Ava died, he felt a void in his heart. He found that he had long fallen in love with her. But he just couldn't accept Emma's death in his heart. Only by torturing Ava did he feel that all this wasn't his fault. After Ava died, he went to the police station and surrendered himself. Waking up from the dream, Connor was full of tears. He laughed painfully, as if crazy. Ava's extra chapter 1 have always known that Jacob is not a good person. But if I don't use Jacob, it's really too difficult for me to bring down Connor's family. I have no patience to watch the people of Connor's family continue to enjoy a wealthy life. In my previous life, Connor used me and our marriage to ruin my family. Why can't I use the same means? I can also use marriage to achieve my purpose. As for Connor, I don't want to have any entanglement with him for the rest of my life. So as soon as Jacob appeared, I immediately had an idea in my mind. Jacob is not a smart person, and he is very conceited. He has a criminal past. This is really the person sent to me by heaven. I deliberately got close to him, became friends with him and married him. After getting married, every time he touched me, I endured nausea. In the first few years of marriage, I used all means of contraception. I don't want his inferior genes. But if I want Jacob to transfer his shares to me willingly, I must have his child. So I flew directly abroad and made a decision only after carefully selecting from the sperm bank abroad. My child is smart, lively, beautiful and sensible. And I am sitting on hundreds of millions of assets, with both parents alive. I am a winner in life. End of full text. 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 End of full text.